Governor Romney, do you recall what you were doing exactly a year ago today?
Let's see. Today is November what?
5th, right?
Getting ready for a big celebration, I think, on November 5th, yeah. Didn't work out exactly as we planned, though.
How has running for president changed your life, if at all?
Well, we get the chance to go across the entire country and meet people of all different backgrounds ultimately we were in 50 states. And you come away with an extraordinary appreciation for the character of the American people. If you just watch the news, you see what's unusual and in some cases not positive. You see the bad things that have happened during the day. But you don't get to see the millions upon millions of homes where good things are happening. I got to see those homes. And I came away more in love with America, more inspired with the unique character of America. I mean, running for president is an absolutely fabulous experience. Even though I lost, I loved the race. I loved being able to see America the way I did. And if you get the chance to run for president, do it. It's really fabulous. And how am I changed? I'm more in love with America. I'm more concerned about the future. I happen to think that America's role in the world is essential and unique, that America has to be strong. I'm concerned that we're on a road that's making us a little weaker, and I'd like to see us get on a stronger path, and hope over the rest of my life I can keep campaigning for that, although I'm not planning on running for office again. You, on the other hand, Bob, might consider it.
Yeah, there's no demand for that, so we'll put it aside. As more often than not, sports is a diversion, it's entertainment, it's good fun, but it is a shared experience. It cuts across demographic lines, Democrat, Republican, male, female, old, young, black, white, and that's part of its appeal. And that really resonates when something happens, something traumatic happens, and the place where people of all backgrounds come together, the kind of communal gathering place, is often a sports event. So coincidentally, the Yankees were in the World Series right after 9/11. Most of the country doesn't like the Yankees, but that year they did, because they sensed that New Yorkers were uplifted. And when they sang God Bless America at those World Series games, maybe it's routine now, but in the raw aftermath of 9/11, it was deeply, deeply meaningful and moving. And when people came to Yankee Stadium for that first World Series game, many of them came despite their fears and said, if we don't do what we normally would do, then it's a form of surrender. And when President Bush went to the mound wearing, though most of the audience didn't know it, a bulletproof vest, a flak jacket, and threw a perfect strike that night, it's just a pitch, it's just a ball game, but it meant more than that.
Yeah.
And your Olympics, our Olympics, so soon after 9/11, took on greater meaning because of that. If it had been in Vancouver, or if it had been in Nagano, it wouldn't have meant as much.
Well, perhaps the most inspiring part of the games, one of the most inspiring part of the games occurred as told by Derek Parra, and I know a number of you have heard me or Fraser, others tell this experience, but Derek came to Salt Lake City as an athlete in speed skating, long track speed skating, and guy's about 5'4", Hispanic American, raised in Los Angeles. A friend says to him, "You'll never be an Olympian, never get to an Olympics in rollerblading," which is the sport he participated in. So he tried on skates, and he was good. He worked and worked and worked and made the U.S. speed skating team. I mean, think about this, going up against these big Minnesotans and Michiganders and so forth. Came to the games, skated his heart out, got a silver medal, then got a gold medal. Fastest man in the world on ice. And at the closing ceremonies, I invited him to come sit with the vice president in the vice president's box. And as he was coming in, I said to Derek, "What was the most meaningful part of the experience of the Olympics for you?" And it was not the silver, and it was not the gold. He said it was being honored to carry in the flag that had flown above the World Trade Center, the American flag, on 9/11 into the opening ceremonies. And some of you remember far enough back to that experience, but this flag, American flag, was above the World Trade Center on 9/11. It is badly torn and burned. It was provided by the Port Authority. It's about 8 feet by 12 feet. And 8 athletes were selected by their peers to carry in the flag. Derek was one of them. He said that as they prepared to bring it into the opening ceremony stadium and holding it horizontally because it's in such bad shape you couldn't put it up a flagpole, he said, we had expected the crowd to burst into cheers when they announced the flag, but instead, total silence, complete reverence. And he said, so we carried the flag and stopped in front of the choir and the symphony, and they began performing the national anthem. And he said, Mitt, it was hard to hold on to my emotion as they were singing those words and I was holding that flag. And then the choir did something he hadn't expected. I knew it was coming because as the guy in charge of the Olympics, I chose the version of the national anthem they sang. And in this version, you sing the last phrase of the national anthem a second time as a reprise. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And he said this time, as they sang it the second time and up an octave, he said a gust of wind blew in the flag and lifted it in our hands. And he said, for me, it was as if the spirits of all those that had fought and died for American liberty had just blown into that flag. And he said, tears ran down my face. And he said, that was the most meaningful part of the Olympics for me. And as he told me that story, tears filled my eyes as well. It was, if you will, in that moment of sport, as the nation came together, as the world came together, a time of unity and strength and a recognition of the goodness of the heart of humankind, and a recognition that America was going to stand up and say no to the evil that we had seen.
Because you did such an outstanding job, and there are always quibbles, but in the overview, you did such an outstanding job, and your team did such an outstanding job. It would have been an excellent Olympics even without what preceded it. But given the fact that you had to turn things around, I would imagine, although you may have bigger fish to fry, that within sports, people reach out to you. I would imagine that there were feelers. I'm asking this question not knowing, but I would imagine there were feelers when Paul Tagliabue stepped aside from the National Football League or from Major League Baseball now that Bud Selig's about to step aside. Would something like that ever interest you?
That's probably not part of my career path. The Olympics was enough of a departure from reality for me. I was not a great athlete in high school. I didn't play any college sports. I have 5 boys, as you know. We have the Romney Family Olympics every summer. The Romlympics, we call it. We have various little sporting events. I typically come in 6th out of the 5 of them, plus me. And when it was publicized that I had taken the job to run the Olympic Winter Games in Salt Lake City, my sons, of course, knew it, but when it was in the paper, my oldest son called and he said, Dad, I saw the paper this morning. I called the brothers. We want you to know there's not a circumstance we could have conceived of that would put you on the front page of the sports section. So I don't know that a sporting career is in line with my personal accomplishments, but I love this Olympic experience. You know, you've been in the world of sport for, your entire life.
Yeah.
And you've seen great moments and not so great moments. You've seen great productions of sport and some that are not so great. What makes great sporting events? What is it that these people can do well that makes a fabulous experience for people in the community? And what is it that doesn't go so well? You've seen it firsthand.
Setting matters. Obviously, the setting matters. And if you've got a big event and you've done a good job so that people arrive with minimal hassle and in a good frame of mind so they can enjoy the event. But then the beauty of sport is that it's a drama without a script. And sometimes you can have all the pieces in place and the World Series winds up being a 4-game sweep, or the Super Bowl winds up being a blowout. Or for an American audience, in the 10 Olympics I've done, 2006 in Torino, Italy, was the least memorable simply because none of the storylines played out. Michelle Kwan got hurt. Bodie Miller didn't do anything, although he's expected to do well, didn't win any medals. None of the storylines played out. None of the non-American athletes did anything that was historic. So try as we might, that was the only time that I've ever done an Olympics where we didn't win the ratings. We were beaten by American Idol, which then was at its peak, and that convergence of events. So what makes a great event is the setting and the context, the meaning of the event. A regular season game can't be as meaningful as the World Series or the NBA Finals or the Super Bowl. So if you've got something where something's really at stake and a dramatic setting and then it happens. I'll give you just a couple of examples. The opening ceremony in 1996 of the Atlanta Games, nobody knew who was going to light the torch. It was the best kept secret imaginable. 5 people, I think, knew. Our friend Dick Ebersol, who ran NBC Sports and was a genius at putting on the television presentation of an Olympics, he was one of those who knew. He refused to tell me and Dick Enberg, he was doing the games with me, refused to tell us. He said, we want your reaction to be spontaneous. And it turned out it was Muhammad Ali. They rehearsed it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And somehow did it under cloak of darkness, and nobody knew. And at that point, although Muhammad was pretty much in the throes of his Parkinson's syndrome, he wasn't nearly as bad off as he is now. So he was able to get up there. And when the moment came, and Janet Evans, the great Olympic swimmer, ran up those steps holding the torch, and Ali stepped out of the shadows, and he was only illuminated at the exact split second that she handed him the torch. It's a very unusual thing, and you alluded to it earlier, when the crowd fell silent rather than cheering when they brought in the World Trade Center flag. It's a very unusual and moving experience when a crowd of 60, 70,000 people who had been so exuberant falls silent. And for 2 or 3 seconds, while they kind of processed, my God, it's Muhammad Ali standing there. And then there was an audible gasp. You never hear a gasp from that many people. And then slowly the applause built because of what it represented. Muhammad Ali was an extremely divisive and controversial character at the height of his career as a boxer. He divided the nation. But there's something about the arc of his life that people came to admire. The perseverance, the basic decency. And now here was this man who once was the most beautiful and dynamic of athletes, and a voluble man, you know, a man who could just talk your ear off and make you laugh and never at a loss for words, now trapped in a certain sense inside this Parkinson's syndrome, and once obviously an egotistical and vain man. I'm too pretty to be a boxer, I'm the prettiest man in the world, and somehow having come to terms with this and not at all ashamed, proud to stand on a world stage, trembling as he was. That embodied a lot of what people are drawn to the Olympics for. And you could just feel the little old ladies from Omaha who might have said, that draft dodger, all of a sudden, no, I get he's a human being and he has qualities that we admire. And in this setting, we're moved by this. And the gasp gave way first to applause, which you hear at the opera, but not so much necessarily at the ballpark. And then a crescendo of cheers as he lit the torch. That was one. Another happened here, and locals are not so thrilled by it, but when Michael Jordan made the last shot in 1998, you know, I was lucky enough to call that. They're down by 1, he makes the shot, and he holds this classic pose. They could have sculpted a statue just based on how he held himself there. And it turns defeat into victory, and it ends, although he did come back with the Washington Wizards some years after that, it ends one of the epic careers in American sports. And no great American athlete has ever had a better kind of closing act than that. Ted Williams hit a home run on his last at-bat, but it wasn't in the World Series. This one won the NBA championship, and I recall saying, because we weren't sure he'd retire, who knows what will unfold over the last few months, but that may have been the final image of Michael Jordan in the NBA. And if that's the final chapter, what a way to close the book. But you couldn't script that. But you had the setting, you had the NBA Finals, you had passionate fans in Utah, you had a worthy opponent. If it was just any opponent, it wouldn't have mattered as much. But you had Karl Malone and John Stockton and Jerry Sloan, and they deserved their championship too. You had the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, as the late, great Jim McKay said. So all the pieces were in place, and now can the actors on that stage rise to an occasion that justifies it? And when that happens, boom. And your Red Sox, had they won in St. Louis, great. But to win the last game at Fenway Park, better still,
Yeah,
because you've got the setting.
But in closing, I just want to say how much I appreciate the fact that you're here and how much I appreciate the work that you do. As you can tell by listening to Bob and to me, we believe sport plays a much bigger role than just entertaining people. It lifts people, it inspires people, it makes us want to be better. It makes us have great moments of excitement and thrilling opportunities in our life. It's a major part of the American experience and the human experience. And you're central to it. Appreciate the work that you do. Keep it up, do it better, and let's have some great times ahead. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Governor Romney. Thank you all.
Thank you.